Thank you for joining us for another For Investors by Investors Long Beach Cerritos podcast. As always, we're proud to be your all-education real estate resource without any kind of sales pitch. If you'd like to attend one of our meetings in person, we meet on the last Thursday of each month at the Cerritos Library in Cerritos, California. You can RSVP at meetup.com/for investors by investors. To find more investment resources such as blogs and podcasts and content from other FIBI groups, go to forinvestorsbyinvestors.com and search our entire library. Now on to the podcast.
Okay, thank you guys very much for coming today. Really, really appreciate it. Sorry for starting a little bit late. It's been a long day in real estate. Time to make some money. So, who here is here for the first time? Wow, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Well, I promise you guys we won't sell you anything. We're just going to teach. That's the whole idea behind FIBI, is stands for Investors by Investors. We basically, the whole idea behind this is we don't upsell boot camps and book and tape sets and the $16,000 course and all that stuff. And I'm not up here to try to sell you my houses and my investments and all that kind of stuff. I'm just here to teach because, and Raymond and I have been Raymond actually came on, how long was it? Like 4 months now? 4 months. Yeah, 4 months now. And I brought him on here because he's a brilliant realtor and broker, and he's done hundreds and hundreds of transactions, and it's absolutely amazing what he's been able to accomplish. And so all of the different FIBI chapter leaders, we have multiple chapters throughout Southern California. You can find us on meetup.com or go to forinvestorsbyinvestors.com. And all the chapter leaders are full-time professional real estate investors. So all the people that come up are professionals at what they do, know their segment of the business, and really just try to teach, because everybody in the room, the reason why we do this, we don't make any money at these things, is because the resources in the room. You guys don't realize necessarily what resources you guys have, and some of you guys do, and it's great to come together because we can't really do this without each other. This is all a team sport. 90% of the money I make is because of working with other people consistently and having systems in place with other people and utilizing resources, whether it's capital, finding deals, knowledge and expertise, time. There's so many different things that that you don't even realize that you have the skill sets of doing right now, that it's really, really cool that everybody can do this. It can be really, really difficult sometimes, especially when the market tanks, like when I jumped into real estate and lost everything. So you learn really fast. What happens? I jumped into real estate in 2006. And I've been investing in real estate since then full time. We've flipped over 700 houses now. We do about 5 a month. We do a lot of value add multifamilies. We have about 10 million lent out in different markets around the country right now to other flippers. We do short-term rentals, and we also, I think I mentioned value add multis. We raise capital for syndications and things like that as well. So it's a lot of fun after you get going and start developing the relationships that you need to do this. And I recommend all of you guys going to as many of these types of things as you can, because in the beginning I was going to 4 a week, and it was the development of the resources that occurred out of that is so powerful over the long period of time that it just explodes your business, because it's all a matter of the resources that are at your disposal. Once you meet the guy and have the guy trusting you that has $10 million or $20 million or a couple $100,000 or $5,000, it doesn't matter what it is. You could have the guy that has the $5,000, that's all that's needed for an earnest money deposit to go wholesale a deal, right? Doesn't matter what it is, there's always about how do you put together a deal to make money together with the resources other people have, okay? So today, we're going to talk a lot about due diligence and how to actually do that on your investments. And Raymond's going to be talking quite a bit about the property aspect of things. And I have a bullet list of topic points. We don't have a presentation here, so after a while I'm just going to go put it on the FIBI slide. So you guys don't have to worry about that. But what I'd like to do is just start off by going through a couple of the slides here. And let's see. I don't like the words of this. Where is this? Okay. So first thing is, you don't need to see our faces. So the annual membership, okay? So if you guys want to go to this one, or if you guys like this, you guys can come all year long for $199. If you want to go to any of the chapters, which we have like 5 chapters throughout Southern California. And where's Jeff? Jeff is here. He just started a new chapter. He started the Culver City chapter. Tell us a little bit about your chapter real quick.
FIBI West Side. We start the end of January will be our first meeting, and our plans on things with FIBI is passive investing. So how to safely invest in passive invest as a passive investor, things you can invest in as a passive investor, how to invest as a passive investor. Every month will be a new topic about passive investing.
And Jeff is a multifamily expert, so if you guys are interested in multifamilies, talk with him because he knows his stuff. Question back.
Pasadena has a subchapter as well.
Oh yeah, Pasadena does have a multifamily one as well. So that being said, we also have a conference coming up. So if you go November 10th and 11th coming up, we're not doing normally we do a November meeting here, but I have a 3-month-old and I'm trying to make sure my wife is happy and not going on too many of these things. So in November we're gonna not do it here, but we're gonna do November 14th at the South Bay on where you should invest next. And the conference is actually really interesting. We have some of the best topics you guys can think of, like raising capital, international investing, passive investing, syndication investing, multifamily, flipping, like everything you can think of. And we compiled a list for the speakers that are literally the top in their field. They really know their stuff, and we're going to add a ton of value. It's a 2-day event, so obviously it's a lot to go there. But I can tell you, when I went on a 2-day event to learn about note investing, for example, it changed my entire strategy, where all of a sudden I have this new tool to put in my tool belt, and it made me to be a much bigger resource to a lot of other people because of that education that I had. And I'm telling you right now, these types of educational things are super important, because that one thing, I've seller financed hundreds of houses now, including multifamilies, including now being able to structure 1031 exchanges with the debt piece and all that stuff, all because of that one weekend course. And I paid a consultant and some attorneys some money, and Bill in the back over here for some of the paperwork. This conference is in Marina Del Rey. Thank you very much for that. So, and if you go to Intelligent Investor, RECON, splashthat.com, which is really weird for some reason. If you just go to this website here, you'll find our chapter or our thing there. And we have one slide in here. I think she put it in here. So, okay. So here's the conference. Now, right now this says FIBI code for $100 off the ticket price. Okay. If you guys use my code, so CG24, it'll be $300 off. It'll be $395 for the weekend if you guys want to go to this, okay? Instead of the $400. That's my code, okay? Don't pay attention to Facebook Live. So that's just great, yeah. Oh, sweet. I hope not. So anyway, so that'll give you the $300 off if you guys want to do that OCG24, okay? So if you guys want to go to that. I give it to the people that I don't want people paying the $695 price. It's worth it, but at the same time, $300 is a lot of money, so don't worry about it. That being said, we do have a couple of sponsors as well. The way we don't make any money at these events, like I mentioned, but we do have sponsors, and they're all people that I've worked with or trust, including OCG Properties, which is my company, so I'm a sponsor. Shocker. So, Jeff, we have Jeff here from UDirect, IRA Services. Can you tell us a little about what UDirect does?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can invest your IRAs or old 401ks and assets outside of the stock market. Most companies limit you to stocks and bonds, but the IRS doesn't. So if you're interested in leveraging your IRAs outside of the stock market, getting into real estate, making loans, pretty much anything that's talked into this here, the IRA can help you accomplish that. And we're actually going to be at the conference that Scott's talking about as well. So one of our companies is going to be one of the speakers. So it's going to be a great event. But yeah, we appreciate the time.
I have a self-directed 401k, an IRA, and health savings account, and it's one of the best things you can do. I've flipped houses after a year or after 12 months inside of my 401k, where literally you buy a property and the thing is that you can't consistently flip inside your 401k because it can be deemed as running a business inside your 401k. But if you hold it and rent it for 12 months or typically a hold is, after 12 months and a day, then you can then go sell it, realize the equity in that property, and then reinvest that if you want to sell it. The whole idea behind it is build a cash flow stream inside your own 401k. So you don't build it to here and then last you until you die off the principal. You build it to here and live off the cash flow. The problem is most traditional investments don't allow you to do that necessarily, with as far as cash flow goes. And so that's one of the biggest problems, right? So thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
For the solo 401k, mine, I use some notes. So I lend the money now from solo 401k. Another great tool to use.
Yeah, notes are really cool inside the 401k. Because you have no problems. You can make as much money as you want on notes.
Question, are these only for the retirement 401k plans for individual investors and business owners, or do they also apply to people who are employed in a corporation?
If you are, it's a big topic, but if you're, so the thing is, he asked the question, is this only for people that are self-employed or, have their own 401k plan? And no, self-directed 401ks, if it's a solo 401k for a business owner, typically, in order to contribute, then you have to make ordinary income outside of this. And if you have a 401k with your company, typically you can open another 401k and transfer money in it. But if you're with your current employer, most of the time they have what's called an in-service transfer. They don't allow an in-service transfer, but sometimes inside those plan documents they'll allow you to transfer it out. The only difference between a normal 401k and a self-directed 401k is the normal one allows you to invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and things like that. A solo 401k, you can pretty much invest in whatever you want other than life insurance, collectibles, and I don't know anything else. I can't remember.
No, it's good to know. I have some old 401ks.
Technically, you have it stored somewhere else.
Yeah. I have 401ks from former employers, so I could probably do it.
You can roll, once you quit your job, you can typically, sweet, roll it all over and you're good. So, and you don't have to make any money to keep it open. You just can't contribute until you made that money. So makes sense?
Yep, thank you.
We also have Trillion Capital. Anybody here from Trillion? Okay, Trillion is a hard money lender that specializes in Southern California and will lend capital on flips, including new construction and things like that. Anybody here from New Western? Okay, so New Western is a wholesaler on crack, basically, in Southern California. So they wholesale a ton of properties here in Southern California. Concept 360, I don't see anybody here from them. They are a property management company based out of the Long Beach area. Awesome property management company that I know a lot of people that have used. Note assistance program. Anybody here from? You're not. You just work with them, right? So awesome. So we have somebody that has worked with them in the past. I've worked with them in the past, and basically they help people invest in notes. They have a trade desk. They have note classes and things like that, and they teach people how to invest in notes. It's a great course to take. And then we have Hart King. Bill, tell us a little bit about Hart King.
Thanks. Bill Hart. We've helped him out with some of his business organization and deals, and we're based in Orange County. I'm a real estate lawyer. My firm, we've got about 20 lawyers. We do a lot of different things, but vis-a-vis this group, I've got a real estate practice called litigation transactions for about 40 years, and so that's my thing, and that's why I'm here, and happy to answer questions if anybody has here informally, as some of you already know, and be a resource and a support for anyone here. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. I've used Bill multiple times for contracts and things like that. He's a great attorney. Really takes the time to sit down with you, which is what makes a good team member on that side, is teaching. You have CPAs, you have attorneys, you have financial planners, you have all these different professionals, and most of them are not very good teachers. So you want to find the right ones that teach you about this stuff, and that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the education. You can go to TurboTax or do whatever. Who cares? Like that stuff is, anybody can do a basic tax return, and every CPA will have it done differently, but the people that are going to teach you is who you really want to find. So, Raven, talk to us about what you do and what makes a really good broker and realtor compared to most.
Okay. So I'm a real estate broker, so I can answer that question. So I've been in real estate for about 12 years right now, and we have sold over 300 homes right now. And my specialty is in residential real estate, so single family residence. But across the board, for any real estate brokers I've met with, commercial, multi-units, retail plaza, another big one is warehouses. I think the big thing is the realtor is asking you questions to know about what your objective is. And another thing about teaching stuff is the same thing. After one transaction, are you familiar with the whole transaction? Or some people, after they bought a house, they still don't know what happened. They just got a key. And through the whole process, they're like, okay. So, yeah, I believe maybe some of those happen to you. So a good realtor is someone who can really listen to you, and they do ask questions about what you need, what you want. So I think that's my input on this topic.
I think it's really key because, like I was talking about as far as the educational piece, there's realtors out there that are new that, might be able to add some value and hustle for you and things like that. But the guys that are experienced are the ones with all the resources I was talking about, the people that have those kind of relationships that can bring in different tools and different systems in place to help you through a transaction. And that's hard to find. There's few and far between of the experienced people that actually know what they're doing. So when it comes to team members, when we talk about due diligence in real estate, it always starts with your team. You have to have that good, solid foundation to get started with in the first place. Which is your attorney, your CPA, your realtor or broker, your lender, and multiple lenders in different ways. So there's pros and cons to each one. You have your inspectors and things like that. You have bird dogs on the ground. They call bird dogs just affiliates that help you find property, right? You have who am I missing now? Property managers, one of the worst people on the planet. So I own a management company, so I know how hard it is to run property management. Dealing with tenants is not fun. And when talking about specifically when you're looking for quality team members, like understanding what makes a quality property manager, for example. On the property management side, there's so many bad ones, and there's so many ways they can mess up, and sometimes they're really good at some stuff and really bad at other stuff. For example, you have leasing. What are their tenant qualifications? What kind of background checks do they do on these tenants? What are the different things that they can mess up on? Do you want them? What is the minimum credit score that they require? Do they allow people with evictions or bankruptcies or things like that? And if so, what period of time afterwards? Personally, for our management company, I don't care if they have a bankruptcy. If it's gone now and they have no debt and they show enough income coming in, a lot of times it can be explained away by medical or, any other random issue that can happen. So that's just with, tenanting properties alone, let alone the walkthroughs and things like that they should be doing with these and the communication with the tenants, because that's your customer. The tenant's really your customer in this case, which sometimes you don't want your customers because they drive you crazy. But certain customers are horrible, but other ones are amazing, So, and you want to take care of people as best you can, and how do they go about doing that? Because all that communication piece leads right into the repairs and maintenance aspect of this, and how fast are they getting out there? Do they have procedures where they check to make sure that people are doing good, that did a good job at the property, and the tenant's happy afterwards? Did they fix everything? Did they leave a mess? What do they do? Think about all the problems that can go into anybody that comes and repairs your property. If you've ever had someone come in and do work, it's there's a lot of issues there. Are they good at accounting? What do their monthly statements look like every single month? What are what is their delinquency procedures? Do they file eviction on the 15th every month? Do they make people come in and do payment plans on property, on back rent if they're communicating with you? What kind of leeway do they give? Because I'm telling you, that's one of the hardest things in the world to stay up on is delinquencies, because you could have a real hardline approach and say, hey, 15, you're out. And you're going to go through a lot of turnover. If someone's communicating with you on, someone could be a great tenant for 3 years and then all of a sudden miss a month or be behind on that. Do you want to kick them out because something happened in their life for a couple months? Get them on a payment plan. Say, pay me here, 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 and here. If you do that, there's no problems. Make them come in and sign an agreement with you. These are the little things that over time, as you get educated on property management, for example, or any of these other professions, you will realize what makes a good property manager or another team member that is good or bad. So. Have you dealt with any major contractors or inspectors and things like that? Have you gone through? I'm sure you've gone through your share of inspectors, right? So
there are two in the room.
Oh, is there? Oh, awesome! I'm gonna have some fun with you guys.
So ask something to a real estate agent part. It's like a good agent, especially local agent. It's like when you have one good agent, you have the whole team. Usually, an agent who's been in town for a long time. He's gonna have his inspectors, his appraiser, his CPA, his attorney, and all the resources you need to do the due diligence. But one thing you can check out is you call an agent, you ask for a referral. He gives you the referral. Always ask the referral. The person he refers to you, if he knows the agent. Sometimes they can just yell someone and give you the names.
Just because they want to give them a resource.
They want to help and give you resources. You want to do due diligence on that part. Make sure this guy is really trustworthy.
I agree, and a lot of times you can get bad referrals because you need to understand the education of the person that's referring you that person, right? Do they know what a good CPA is? If someone goes tell me, hey, go to my stock guy, he only lost me 12% this year, which is amazing. Wait a minute. So, there's the referral piece is great if you're dealing with someone that has a higher level of education that understands what makes a good one. It's like I always tell people, you don't go ask your broker uncle for financial advice, right? You don't go ask someone that isn't in a better financial position than you for that financial advice. So, your uncle's not broke, bro. And I think, so getting back into the team members a little bit, who has had, well, let me pick on the inspectors real quick. Who has had a crappy inspector in the past, or have dealt with an inspector? Oh, yeah, of course. So, there's so many different types of inspectors. You really want to get one that will take the time to go through the inspection report with you and maybe has some idea of what those things might cost. And I even go through, and I don't need to do this anymore because my guys are trained, but in the beginning, you go through and have that inspector have a conversation with your contractor and say, hey, are you seeing the same things? Here's the inspection report here. And it gives you a lot of education in the beginning, especially if you don't know what things cost and you're not sure of things. And, those inspectors have a ton of resources too. They know contractors. They're in the field. They know realtors. They have that relationship. And you want to look at the inspection reports as well, because a lot of times they'll just put written verbal stuff in there and cut it out. And there's little tiny hidden liability things in there that say, hey, your HVAC system looks like crap, by the way. Not really in those words, but looks like crap, by the way. And go get a licensed HVAC person, because I'm not going to give you a ruling on that. I'm just going to tell you that it looks like it's messed up, and here's the issues that I see with it. But by the way, go talk to an outside HVAC specialist here. Same thing with plumbing, electrical, roof. The inspector's just there to look at the property and give you as much as they can, but they're going to also absolve themselves from liability in their contracts. They're not going to go through and take on liability for something that they missed, preferably. So sometimes there's liability there, and they have liability insurance and things like that, but really they're there as a second check on top of your contractors to make sure that you're not missing something big. It's something like the foundation wall is messed up, it's going to cost you a bunch of money, or the plumbing that is in the walls is still the old wrought iron stuff that's falling apart and everything, which happens quite a bit in the Midwest, and even here in LA and a lot of different areas. So tell me guys, what's some of the craziest stuff you guys have seen on an inspection? I'm curious. So,
faulty piping.
Faulty
underneath the toilet. Maybe a couple more flushes.
It's just gone.
And they're in the crawl space, so we've seen some hazards.
We had a contractor, thank God we caught this on the punch list. We had a contractor put a PVC plumbing pipe on a gas line. And we're like, you're fired and you're an idiot. Like, you're going to kill somebody. Like, you shouldn't be working on construction if you, I'm like, what else did you work on? You know, like, immediately, no electrical, right? Nothing, you know, like, it's amazing to me sometimes. I mean, but you deal with so many people in this business that sooner or later, someone is going to screw up and screw you. So how do you handle that? And how do you mitigate that risk? By understanding what the different team members' expertise are, and the only way you do that is you make them sit down and go over everything with you and teach you what they're seeing, right? And that's the best way to do your due diligence on these things, is having those team members that teach you. So, does that make sense to you? Yeah.
Inspectors, I think and you do communicating with inspectors.
Yeah, that communication is key. And who here has gotten screwed over by a contractor in the past? I think everybody that's invested in real estate in like real scale at some point has been screwed over by a contractor. I was just telling you earlier that I had a contractor on a 19-unit, $600,000 rehab that told me, he asked me, how do I get licensed and bonded? Or how do I get bonded to get licensed? How do I get bonded for a big construction job, a commercial job? And they wanted audited financials, and he needed help with that. And I said, okay, well, where are you at with your current financials? Do you have QuickBooks set up? How are you tracking? And he's like, oh, if I have money in the bank, then I'm good. And I'm like, let me have my lien waivers right now from these contractors, because you're not going to be paying them for sure. You know, at some point, someone's going to lose out on that, right? And so that type of thing can be very, very key. Have you dealt with any headaches on that side, on the construction side, too much? Yeah.
Don't ever pay them upfront.
I
had clients who did that.
Just
they disappear.
Yeah, they're gone. So, and not all of them, but look, contractors are in the field, right? They're working with their hands. They don't necessarily understand money. And we're already talking about 99% of the people in the world not understanding money. And then you add the construction side in the field like that, there's no education there. And it's not, like, nobody teaches this. Yeah, you might have the wealthy barber every once in a while or something like that. But the more you get educated on the financial side, the more wealthy you're going to be long term. And a lot of these contractors, that's amazing. Like, I would never pay a contractor up front.
You do referrals. Check the reference. That's really important.
Yeah, if they worked on other jobs, go to those other jobs. Have people that have showed you, show me what they've done, and what issues happened after the construction job. That's when you find out how bad they really were. We added 900 square feet to an 1,100 square foot house in Garden Grove. Everything is fine until we go to the bathtub to put my son in the bathtub, and we turn on the bath water, and the bath faucet shoots off completely. And I was like, whoa, what happened here? And it wasn't a big deal. It's just putting it back on and sealing it and fixing it. But it's the little things like that you don't know until after the fact. So I even tell people after every major rehab, expect another couple $1,000s worth of stupid stuff that could happen afterwards, right? On a major rehab, because you have to have those buffers in place. And one of the things you really want to have in place is construction contracts. So out of the people in the room that did construction jobs, did you have construction contracts? Raise your hand if you did. This is about right. This is absolutely right. Nobody does it. And what we do in our contracts, we make them have general liability insurance, right? You have to have that. You make them have workers' comp. You make them sign lien waivers with every single check they get. Okay? You pay for materials at all costs if you can, completely separate from labor, and make them bill labor. And then another thing you can do is, here's the thing, contractors, for the homeowners, they're way more expensive, than the actual professionals, because the professionals know what their materials costs are and what their labor's costs should be, right? If you're a homeowner, those prices, it has to be 75% plus of the contractors will only work with homeowners because they can rip them off. Because they're like, here's a $50,000 kitchen that should cost 10. So I got a custom kitchen done, all cabinets, everything, in my house for $12,000. Okay, the normal stuff is like $4,500 plus install, right? In Tennessee, it's like another $500 for install. Out here, it's like $3,000 or more, for install. It's just labor price differences. But understanding what goes into those contracts, you go through and put incentives for performance inside those contracts and point them out to the contractors in detail as you go along the project. Because what happens is, you go through and you go tell the contractor, hey, you get done 2 weeks early, I'll give you an extra $100 a day for every day you get done early. But if you're late, I'm going to give you 2 weeks of lead time. If you're late on that lead time, and I say, how long should this take? And you go tell me, hey, it'll take 3 months. Okay, you're being really conservative with that first, right? And then after that, it's, okay, every day after that 2 weeks that happens, it's costing me interest every single day. Here's how much interest it costs me. I'm going to charge you that interest after that period. Is that fair? Being really, really communicative with these contractors. Because if you don't, even if you're communicative, down the line, gets late in their timing. Oh, I don't remember anything we talked about. Are you kidding? Why are you so mad right now? The contractor I told you about that just did all that, that told me if he has money in the bank, he's doing okay. He was like 2 months late on this project and was pissed that I tried to charge him for that. And I'm like, this is how much money you cost me from this, and freaking out, saying he's going to do a lien on the property and all this stuff, and it was like $5,000. I'm like, forget it. I'm not going to deal with it in this case. It didn't cost that much extra money on a giant project, so I just let it go. But if it's a lot more money, I would not have let it go.
And then do you
know it's in the contract
if they finish early?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's important because they will get it done early if they're getting a bonus. And if they go tell their guys that too, their guys are getting a bonus. And a lot of times, if I know the crews really well, I'm like, I'm going to talk to your guys and give your guys that same bonus on top of that. And they appreciate that more than ever. You treat contractors right, and hopefully they treat you right too. But there's a lot of issues that can come out of these construction contracts, especially from the insurance side. And if you guys need contracts on that site, email me. I'll send you a template contract. You can have Bill review afterwards. Don't take my advice for it. So, because you don't want to go and be an attorney now too. So, let's talk a little bit more about the team members. What do you think makes a good lender?
Yeah, responsive and do the qualification right.
Okay.
They don't ask for more documents later. Sometimes they do have to ask for more, but not the ones that they could have had you prepared. You don't want to wait until the last minute and something came up and you already removed your contingencies. So that's
and that's absolutely key. There's differences between brokers and bankers, right? You have brokers that typically will go out and find the lending from all these different sources and have access to all these sources. Typically a banker usually works for one specific direct lender, but they may be able to go out to different sources as well, depending on their situation and what bank they work for, and if they're going to go sell it via Fannie or Freddie Mae, Freddie Mac. But you also have private money lenders, flippers. Who's here interested in flipping property? Okay, who's here interested in holding property? Okay, everybody's like, cash flow. Give me cash flow right now. You live in California, so you're like, please give me cash flow somehow. So, most of these hard money lenders, when you want to take down a project, whether you're holding or flipping, you want to take it down fast. You want to bring in a professional lender if you can, if you don't have the capital yourself. Now, it's more expensive, right? Out here in California right now, I've seen it as low as 8.5%, 9%, and a point to 2 points. Okay? Right now. And back in 2007, 6, before the crash, when everything was amazing and going well, and even afterwards, through the down cycle, it was like 12%, 3-4 points at least out here. So I actually, out of state, you make more money on lending, so we lend at 12% a point to a lot of our professional investors. So, and they are happy to do that because as a lender, you want to go through or as an investor, you want to find a lender that's going to come in and be there and be able to fund in like a week or two max, and be able to be there and understand the metrics of the deal, understand the renovation, be able to tell you, hey, this is a bad deal, don't do it. Right? Because if they're not making the profit that they should be making, or they're seeing something wrong, your lender will save your butt sometimes. Because they'll look at it and say, I just underwrote this. I don't see how you're making a profit. And so many new investors push the numbers. They just push it because they're like, they want a deal so bad to make that number work. And so many of these investors don't account for all the money involved. All
How
the
do you
different
interview a private?
Oh man, there's like thousands of them, you know. But in reality, it's the same type of thing, right? Go say, hey, can I go talk to some of your borrowers and understand how you performed from them in the past? Can you show me some of the deals you've lent on, what the rates and terms were, and that kind of thing? How fast can you fund? How long have you been in business? You know, how much capital do you have? Are you going to run out when I need you? You know, all of these types of things are big factors that you want to consider when you're finding a private lender, right? So that, I mean, it's understanding what makes a good lender on that side and finding it. Now, Bigger Pockets is a great place to find questions for all these team members. You go property management questions, private lender questions, like all of that stuff you can find on there. Just get lists of these questions that you can go through to actually ask these people, because that's the key long term, is building this solid foundation around you. And I'm not saying you want one. All these team members, you really need multiple. Like, you don't want one contractor. What happens when you have one contractor, or even just two, and you're doing volume? Their price slowly rises because you know they're the only one. Their time goes out as well, and their quality goes down. So if you have multiple, the guy that comes to me and says, hey, that should be 30 grand in labor when I know it should be 15. Cool, I'll go give it to this guy over here that wants my business. As soon as you do that, puts them in check immediately. They're like, wow, I just lost that deal because I was way over what I should be on that deal. And if you're not sure about the labor costs on some of these, because they hide it, right? They're like, yeah, that'll be about 10 grand or X grand or whatever. They try to hide it in the materials and labor piece as well. And so when you're going through and analyzing this, you're like, hey, how much will it be to install the floors? What's the labor cost? Okay, cool. What's the material cost? Okay, it's $2 a square foot or whatever the cost of the thing is. Okay, great. And normally, like out in Tennessee, it's like another $2 a square foot. Out here, it might be like $3 a square foot to put it in. But after you ask that question and say, what's the labor cost? Okay, great. How many guys do that? And how long does it usually take? Is it a day? Do you have to move all the furniture? Is it prep work? How long does that actually take? What am I finding out? Finding out how many hours and how many people it takes to do that. So I can say, you charge me 10 grand and it takes these guys 3 hours for 2 guys to do this? Kick rocks, get out of here. You know, like, just see the door. You know, I can't believe you just lied to me like that, you know? So, I mean, that's the type of thing you're finding out where the honesty is, right? If they're making $50 or, $75 or $100 an hour for, like, out here for an electrician or a plumber or HVAC tech or something like that, that's reasonable. But the general laborer should be making, like, $20 an hour or something along those lines for the most part. Plus, if you're working with the right contractor that has workers' comp and all that stuff, you better go add, like, 20-30% to that underlying amount of labor cost on top of that, because of that, all the costs that go into it. This is why so many people use illegals to do the actual workload, because they don't have that extra 30% markup from the insurance side, the workers' comp side of things, with all those employees, with the admin side and the human resources element associated with it. I mean, there's a lot of liability when you bring on people like that, right? Anytime you bring on employees, if you're doing it right, there's a lot there. So that's why people go out to these things, because it cuts the cost in half. So it's huge. But so we talked. Let's see, what else do we have on that side? Okay, so insurance agents. Who has had a bad experience with an insurance agent in the past? Okay, what happened?
We got all the way down the wire, like within a week before closing, and suddenly they could provide us insurance.
And the lender's not going to have that, so
right.
That's amazing. See, this is the type of thing, like, the communication is key. The very first, on a single-family home side, the very first insurance agent I got, I was doing this stuff out in Memphis, and he gets me what's called a DP1 policy instead of DP3 policy. DP1 is a residential homeowner policy that does not cover loss of rents coverage, vandalism and theft, the tenant issues coverage that comes with that. DP3 policy is the rental policy. So when my property was vandalized the insurance company didn't cover it, and it cost me $5,000, right? Versus the other side of things would have covered me. So and then there's other things with the insurance. Not all insurance is equal, okay? You're going to see some policies that are like, wow, this is $500 for the year, and oh man, this is $1,000. What's the difference? A lot of times, one of the biggest challenges with this is that these insurance companies will go through and say, I will give you depreciated value coverage, which basically means, hey, your property is worth $100,000 when you buy it. 5 years from now, there's a fire. Therefore, your property's depreciated by 5 years and it's worth less. We're going to pay you out less money. Okay? Full replacement cost coverage is rebuilding the house. And you want to get building code upgrade added to that as well. Potentially dog bite coverage. And you want to watch out because now these insurance companies are being steeped. They're coming in and saying, hey, yeah, we've got this great policy for you. By the way, named storms are not covered. Like, what other storms do I care about? Nothing. You know, it's like amazing to me. When my insurance agent told me that, I was like, what? Those sneaky little bastards, you know? So, and it's things like that, you know, just like, you're just like, oh, you know, like, is this really happening, right? And what are you going to fight in insurance companies' lawyers? You know, they go title insurance companies. I had a title insurance company, a friend of mine, that they went and had a giant $1 million title insurance issue with like a very big title company. And that title company, which I'm not going to name, went through and hired as many attorneys as they could that specialize in title, because now those attorneys can't represent anybody against them because they went through and represented them in the first place, and they have like agreements. Does that sound right, Bill? I have no idea. Okay, yeah, it does, right? Right? I mean, and so like once that happens, then they want anybody to, like, he had such a hard time finding anybody that would help because they all worked with this giant title company in the past. So this is like a huge easement issue. So there's crazy stuff like that happens. Like I was doing a joint venture with my insurance agent on a 30-unit building, and he insisted in getting domestic violence coverage and dog bite coverage. I'm like, okay, I can see the dog bite coverage, but domestic violence? They're like, they'll sue you over anything, and I'm making you get insurance for the things that I see happen. That most insurance companies are going, we're not going to insure it because we have losses there.
What's
so
the
we're not going to insure it.
domestic violence? Like, what does it insure?
Yeah, so husband or wife hit each other and fight and, you know, cause damage. The husband and wife could just sue you as the property owner. And you're like, great. And even if it's not your fault, like, you better have attorney coverage for that because the legal fees will kill you. Just with that alone, if that's the case, right? You better make sure those types of things are covered. So the policy costs me like 25% more because of that. I'm like, you know, you're costing me this money, right? And he's like, yeah, I'm not losing my wealth because of this. So we're putting this in place. And I was like, okay, I can't really fight you on this. You know everything about what problems occur. And it's really cool every single time because they help with the lending piece. We have these storms. They're like, make sure you have copies of the policies because they can cancel a month later and you'll never get notified as the lender. Because if they cancel it within a month, then technically a lot of these insurance companies are not required to notify the lender. But if they cancel them after a month, they will always notify the lender each time if there's a cancellation. And a lot of times they just won't pay initially if it's not on the closing HUD, and then you've got problems there. So these little tiny intricate things as you're going through this is what you pick up after doing 700 stupid transactions and losing money on a bunch of them. You know? So you learn really the hard way, you know? So
be very careful when you close. Make sure you tell your closing agents you want to pay your insurance through escrow. Sometimes everyone forgets. So I got letters 2 months later that I don't have insurance. That's when I find and no one knows.
yeah.
So you have to be very careful on those points.
Right.
I usually pay insurance before closing on a credit card.
Okay.
So that way you get the miles.
Wow.
And you can show that, you bring that to the closing agent and put it on there so that you have a record in writing that everybody knows.
I don't know why the hell I haven't done that. That's like great traveling for free forever. Yeah. That's awesome. Who's had headaches with appraisers in the past?
every single day.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't think I've had more face plants with any other team member than with appraisers, maybe contractors, but definitely not inspectors. So, any contractors in the room? Any chance? No, I'm going to have some fun with you. So appraisers, the thing is, if you don't understand how they're appraising properties, you're probably going to price your property wrong. And in addition to that, the appraisal process really changed when the whole market shifted. So you've got now there's appraisal management companies that govern these appraisals that take a giant chunk of the actual money that goes into that, right? So now all the real good appraisers that were making a ton of money with tons of experience, a lot of them left and said, I'm not doing this anymore because you're going to take out of a $350 appraisal, you're going to take $250 and left with $100 for doing this job. I don't want to do it. That was because the lenders were talking to the appraisers and modifying things when the whole housing boom happened and it collapsed, right? And so what's crazy though is that if you need to understand how to read those appraisals and how to dispute them, okay? Because you have a right to dispute them, and I'm telling you 90% of the time when there's a problem on one of our stuff, it's because the appraiser made a wrong error on a square footage adjustment or a square footage of the property in itself. We've gone back and said, here's our layout, here's our square footage of this thing, you're wrong. And the county assessor is wrong. You just went and pulled that number instead, or they did a wrong job on their measuring or something like that. And so you want to analyze every comp that they put in there. Usually put 3 real comps and then 3 backup comps. And they use the three real ones and they made square footage adjustments. So like out here, you have a much bigger square footage adjustment. Out in Tennessee, for example, we have about $25 a square foot as a square footage adjustment. Even though properties are selling at, $80 or $100 a square foot, they're not going to give you credit for the entire square footage difference. They're going to make you go through and actually take just a percentage of it because they still want you in that box of what the averages are in the area. If you're seeing properties in the 500 to 550 range, all in that area, but yours is way bigger than everything else, they'll get you 575 or something like that, but they're not getting you the big swing difference on that appraisal. And you need to be able to go through and pull your own comps and say, hey, by the way, here's other comps that I pulled. I don't know if you didn't see these because I don't see them on the MLS, and a lot of appraisers only use comps that are on the MLS because it's easy, they have pictures and access to that, versus a lot of the Midwest markets, 90% of the properties don't sell on the MLS, that's private sales. And there's tons of private sales that happen. So you want to go and have your data there and be able to go and find the right appraisal so you can say, hey, appraiser, based on this new information that you're seeing here that I don't think you saw before because it wasn't on the MLS and maybe this slight adjustment you made a mistake on, I think the appraisal should be here. And the reason you're doing that, instead of saying, hey jerk, you messed up and did this, their ego, if they have to make any changes at all, is already harmed because they made a mistake. Okay? And so you have to massage that ego at the same time that you're giving your argument. Right? So you have any kind of negative, in the beginning I'm training other people that are flipping in different markets, and appraisals came in wrong and they come back to the lender, oh my God, this is unacceptable. I refuse to believe there's no other options here. Yeah dude, here's how it works. Here's the email template. Send it out like this, find your own comps and build it. Right? It's crazy.
On the topic of the house size, don't buy the biggest house in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
There's especially houses under 1 million in our market. I'll stay as the specialist. But here, let's say your house is 2,500 square feet. And everyone knows this house is around 1,500. And they sold for 500K. Yours is not going to be double or close to 800. It's going to be still lower than 600. There's always a cap in that number. So just keep in mind for flipping. Don't think you get a great deal because it's so big. Because later on when you flip it, you can only sell for so much more. Just keep in mind.
Absolutely, yeah. It's really interesting when you start to see, the ways you maneuver in real estate to get through problems And that's going to really be the success when it comes to real estate. Your success is how can you solve those problems when they do come, because they will always come. And so I wish I would have known this in the beginning when the market crashed, because I probably wouldn't have lost so much money keeping your head up, looking for the solution instead of going, crap, I'm losing money, and focusing on the problem constantly. It really is a mindset shift a lot of times on how to move forward out of problems and situations. So it's really important to really focus on that, so being solution-oriented. And that's where I'm telling you those resources that are in the room, that going to those 4 networking events a week really substantially helps your ability to maneuver out of situations because of the resources that are available to you. I really feel that right now, and I'm crossing my fingers that I don't lose a bunch of money in this next crash, but right now, my sustainability long term is huge. It's going to take a big beast to take me down now because of the amount of resources that I have and availability to maneuver and basically stick and move like you need to do in real estate sometimes. So I should have known that in 2006, though. When you lose a lot of money and get punched in the face, it hurts. So who here is looking at investing in different markets around the country besides California? Okay, awesome. So that's because there's no cash flow in California and everybody's looking for cash flow. So there's geographic market analysis that you should be doing before investing in these different markets. And I think it's local as well as there's a lot of different indicators that you can be following in a market to see where it's at, right? One of those markets is the housing price indicator. If you guys go to the St. Louis Fed, okay, and just type in St. Louis Fed and find there. It's a little difficult to navigate, but you can find charts for like years and years and years, like 20, 30 years of charts showing the housing prices in a specific geographic area. And you'll see them go up and down and up and down, and you'll see the volatility in that market. So one of the reasons I invest in the Midwest is because it goes up 4% a year. When it crashes, it goes down 4%. And so it's a very stable market to invest in, and I can more accurately predict my cash flow streams. Versus California, you're like,
Are you talking about the FRED, the economic database?
Yeah, FRED, yeah. It's basically the St. Louis Fed is the website for it. And if you type in like a St. Louis housing price index, St. Louis Fed, or if you type in, whatever market you're in, housing price index, St. Louis Fed, you'll actually, they might point you in the right direction on Google for the actual chart, because that St. Louis Fed is a little difficult to navigate to actually find the charts and, do your own, compilation of that data. Okay? But that's huge, right? Because what happens if you looked at California right now, you'd see this, right? Wait a minute, why would I buy up here? Right now, when you see the economics and the way they are. All the fluff you're seeing, all the euphoria and all this stuff right now, it's not real. They just kicked the can down the road. They didn't do anything for the underlying economics. Look at the debt system. There's a big crash that will be coming. And it's going to be exciting, because I can tell you when the deals are thin because there's so much competition. But I was buying amazing 40, 30% loan to 30% of value type deals when the market crashed. You made way more money during the market collapse than a market up. Do you agree? I don't know. You don't know? That's awesome. I can't wait for you to experience my experience. I'm excited. I wish that on you because I know how much learning you'll do during the winter. So I'm following up. Yeah, exactly. So some of the other things in the market, job growth and unemployment rate in that market, understanding the net migration in and out to see if that market's going to be long-term viable. The demographics and the school and education system in the specific submarkets of that market that you're in. Because, for example, in Memphis, the whole city of Memphis is usually pretty crappy schools, except for a couple of areas, and those areas are ridiculously desirable. Same thing with Indianapolis, same thing with a lot of these different Midwest markets. You really want to be careful of those schools because they migrate to those schools. Question about that?
Understand the demographics for employment. If you look for a certain percentage of employers, like how many one employer does to the other one? Like what's your breakdown of it usually?
So
What are you looking at market?
this is just
What is it? They have different industries.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right, like one employer, like you guys are statistic, but one employer is the main person. That kind of scares me personally. You know, if you have a certain percentage, like one company, how much? Or I mean, if it's a university, you understand that. But if it's like just,
I mean, you look at military towns, for example. I know people that own multifamilies in military towns where the base was shut down and everything it just goes to nothing. They lose their entire investment. It's a gigantic, can be a gigantic problem. You know, I invest in Memphis where FedEx is gigantic, but they also have St. Jude, the Children's Hospital there. They have a huge distribution base there. I mean, there's a lot of other industries in that base of industries, a central distribution hub. But I also invest in a lot of different markets. Like Atlanta is a great market for that distribution hub. Yeah, there you go. So, and we've invested there as well. But it's also the sub-markets. Like I invest 45 minutes out of Atlanta in a town called Newnan a lot of times because it's a great market. There's no crime. I still get pretty good cash flow returns. So, and you want to counterbalance the quality of the property versus the cash flow because you can buy $20,000 houses all day long and wherever the hell you want to buy them, but that doesn't mean you want to go into that neighborhood. That doesn't mean that if you got rims up to here and you got boards on all the windows. I'm talking about Memphis specifically because I see it all the time out there. Like I went through markets where I'm driving around neighborhoods and people are cussing at me as I drive through. I'm like, I'm in the wrong neighborhood. Like, and then they take me in the beginning. I had a property manager take me through the neighborhood on a neighborhood that I was like, wow, this is pretty good. There's trees everywhere. I'm from California, you know, like it was beautiful. And then at night on the weekend, I'm like, oh, crackhead. Like, crap, my buddy just bought this house. I gotta go find a way to get out of it. You know, so I mean, I still get crap in the very beginning for buying crappy houses not knowing. And my buddies were the ones that took the hit. And then I made sure afterwards, I'm like, no more hits. We're all going to be making all this money back. But in the beginning, like, we're all trying to make money together going, you know, we had to evict a tenant. It was our very first eviction. It was my buddy's house. We bought a house with a tenant in there, turnkey, we thought, right? Which turnkey, a lot of times, does not necessarily mean turnkey. You better make sure you know all the systems in that property. But what's crazy is we went into this house, and there was a lady that was 500 pounds and bedridden on the floor of the living room on a mattress with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old taking care of her. And you're going, how do I help you? She's like, I'm so sorry. My family, my brother was into drugs and he was taking the money. Now my ex is getting it. We're going to get you the money, and I have to catch up on some of the utilities. And I'm like, okay, cool. Just pay your current rent. Pay $50 a month. We're going to slowly catch you up out of this situation. Another month goes by. Another 2 months, no rent. Going back over there, knocking on the door, flying to Memphis, like when I'm out there because I was going out there every month. Anyways, at that time, now I go like once a year. But in reality, what's crazy is we go in there and the sliding glass door is shattered all over the ground. And I'm like, what happened? And she's like, oh no, I looked up and it was like that. I'm like, you're 2 feet from the sliding door, like it's shattered. What do you mean you looked up and it was like that? One of our kids probably broke it or somebody broke it, you know, and you're going, okay, now I know you're lying. We had to evict her, and what was crazy, it took 15 firemen and a Zulu trooper and a cargo net to get her onto the front window of the house. Like, that makes you a hardened person. That's when you're going, dude, this sucks. And the manager's crying because the little kid's helping put their stuff in a bag, going to the grandparents' house, and the mom's going to the hospital. You know, you're like, at least they're in a better position because these 2-year-old and 4-year-old shouldn't be in that kind of position. But you see sometimes extreme poverty. You know how many people have died, and that's the excuse for not paying rent? I've had parents die 8 times. We're like, no, you don't have any more parents. Sorry. You end up not believing anybody anymore, and it kind of sucks because after a while you're like, yeah, well, if you don't do what you say, I'll put you on a payment plan. First time you don't do what you say, you're out. Because after a while, and it sucks because you're going, I can't let my buddy that owns this house or my investor lose money on this because you're not paying and I feel bad. You know? And it becomes a really hard thing. If you're going to invest in real estate, realize that. Even really good people can turn out to be bad when it comes to money. You know? So remember, 99% of people are not good with money, so you got to keep them in check to make sure you get paid. You know, you let things go too long, you got problems. I mean, there's a lot of issues that go along with that, right?
And it's really good to have the property manager, because sometimes the sentimental part will come out, and it's hard for you to be that bad. Well, I don't want to say the bad person, but it feels like you're doing something horrible. My parents did once, and they quit investing in real estate ever since. they took the rent, and they asked me, so how did you get the rent? And he said, he was driving taxi. And then his daughter was crying in the back. There's nothing in their home. My parents ended up giving the rent back and give them $200 extra. And then they sold it, and everyone touched real estate. So it's actually better to have a professional who can
Not have that emotion.
not have that, just be detached.
I tell my managers out in Tennessee, I went to the California office, you're not the bad guy. Because we're going to fly out here. They found me online before, trust me. They're like looking me up on the recorder's office and trying to call the office and find somebody. I'm like, I don't know who that is. You know? You know? I don't know who Matt is. Who's that? You know? But yeah, it's crazy when you do that, right? But let's get back into the market analysis aspect. One of the other biggest factors, and you brought up employers and stuff, but one of the biggest factors is the government in that state, right? For example, who the hell wants to invest in California right now? With the potential laws changing with rent controls and the tax situation where they're actually increasing taxes like crazy out here. You know, wealthy people are leaving in droves because of this situation, because of the tax situation and the problems here. You know, so the underlying economics of a market is really important, right? What kind of new programs are they going to come out with long term to be able to help a business owner or make things easier for you as a business owner? There's certain things in other markets too, like the taxes, that can be a big deal. In Tennessee, for example, there's some weird thing where there's no state income taxes when you own property in your own name, but if you own it in an LLC, you got to pay a 6% franchise and excise tax based on the value of your property. 6%. That sucks. Yeah. But if you have an LLC that's 95% family owned, you can do what's called the FONS exemption for residential property, not commercial, but residential only, and you don't have to pay the tax. But there's like little intricate things with each market, so that's why it's important to find a CPA and attorney in the market you're doing that business in, so you can ask them that advice. Don't just find one, because I can tell you, I just had a bunch of research done for lending laws in like 10 different states. And I'm getting totally mixed signals from like 3 different attorneys that specialize in lending. And I'm going, who's right? You know, how do you know who's right? It's like you gotta go read the code yourself and have them pull the code. And it's crazy sometimes when you deal with that kind of thing, right? So the governments, the crime rates, median household income, what's the general economy look like too? So all these things before you're looking at, just kind of get a general idea. I'm not saying this is the end factor, because there can be a lot of other local real estate benefits of a market, right? So that you want to deal with. In the local real estate market, we talked about the housing price index and things like that, but we didn't talk about the affordability index. Who knows what that affordability index is? Okay, so what it is basic. Thank you, appreciate it, Dave. Yes, thank you. So it's basically just going through and saying, how is affordable with a 20% down payment, how affordable is that house compared to other markets in the nation, the median income and things like that. So it's understanding, like for example in Memphis it's very affordable, in Florida it's really affordable, in a lot of these lower markets it's really affordable compared to the income in that market and the median incomes in those markets, and there's a really high rent to price ratio in all those markets, meaning, out here in California, you might buy, now it's 700, right? My previous example was 500, now it's got to be 7. You might buy a $700,000 house and rent it for $3,000 or $3,500 a month, or $4,000 a month or something like that, right? In Tennessee or a lot of these other Midwest markets, You might buy a house for 100 and it rents for 1,000. So it's a 1% ratio versus, or a 0.8 to 1.2% ratio, depending on where you're at, instead of, a 0.5% ratio, which makes your cash flow much higher in those other markets, right? Now, you may have potential for appreciation here, maybe not now, right? So it depends on timing. You don't just go through and say, hey, it's going to be ending right now. It's hard to tell because we are at the top of the cycle, but at the same time, there's a gigantic lack of supply. But where does that lack of supply go? That lack of supply is primarily in the lower income areas where the developers, because of the cost of construction here, they're starting to go through and the only option to make deals pencil is to go super high end on the rents and the properties, which takes away more supply. And that's what rent control does here too. Rent control will go through, and what it does is it incentivizes it disincentivizes the investors of making lower income property because it's subject to rent control in the first place. And it doesn't pencil at those numbers based on the values that are out here. So if someone's paying $2 million for a property, but only pencils at 1.5 based on the cash flow of that metric with the increase in rates right now, it's going to destroy the market. And that's what's happening out here right now. Guaranteed. If they enact rent control, it's going to get worse because of the incentive economically from the people that are trying to develop and make money in doing these things, because they don't have any incentive anymore other than just to go high end. So this is the problem. Question?
I mean, not a question, but I like to see people just walk away from their property like 89. I mean, I'm going to see that a possibility, you think? Just because if they have an LLC, they walk away from it.
I don't know. I was 11, so I don't know.
But you know what I mean? So if you look back at it, that's what happened. I mean, when they changed the laws for like professionals not being lying off, they all just walked away, and that's what caused the early 90s commercial crash.
Yeah. Well, now they're talking about getting rid of Prop 13. They're talking about changing some of the values there.
LA's pretty much said if it passes, the whole city of LA's going to property control back.
Well, yeah. I mean, and if it passes, right? Yeah. And like there's markets like Seattle that are trying to enact rent control, but they have to do it at a statewide level, so it'll really never happen because Seattle wants it, but not the whole state. I mean, in their constitution, it says they can. So this is the differences between these different markets that you really want to understand, so that you know, and you want to find, a broker, a realtor, and different people that are professionals in that area to be able to tell you these things. They've been doing it for a while, they know what they're doing, or have done a lot of transaction volume to get that experience. Does that make sense, guys? Okay.
For rent control, it's Proposition 10, so vote no. Just to remind you. And vote yes on number 5. It's the one where seniors, they can move with the same property tax. Disregard the amount of the purchase price.
Perfect.
Exactly. 5 for yes, 10 for no.
And the reason, and what happens when you allow seniors to do that, right? You actually add more properties to the market because they're able to move freely now, because the 90% of them can't move because they can't afford, an extra $7,000 a year in property taxes.
They're paying $700 on the one-day bonus. It's like a
Right. And another thing to be careful about in these other markets right now, based on an economic discussion here, is the pensions, the public pensions, the state pensions, and things like that. Because what happened just right now, and I think it was Illinois, it just happened, how this happened with, was it Illinois?
It was Illinois. They went to court for their pensions with the city workers. Said the city workers brought them to court because they were trying to get on their contract, saying we're not going to pay it, we're going to lower your pensions, blah, blah. They said we have a contract, we went to court. The court said you have to keep up with your contract with the city workers. The city went, we're in trouble, and raised everybody's property rent 1%. So everyone went, well, whatever it was, 1% or 2% to...
It's just like double. Yeah.
Double.
So what happens if that happens here in California? Because they're broke.
No,
right?
it's going to happen here in California.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to follow the same type of thing, right? Like if they see other states do it, they may or may not, right? I mean, it depends on how broke they really are. I'm just hoping the marijuana industry here makes them flush, and then they're fine. So we'll see. Like it happened in Colorado. So
Cal purchased $1 trillion of debt from teachers and firefighters.
it's a little scary, and that's all I'm saying. So that's why I'm saying look at these other states. Like, are they broke or are they doing okay? Like, where are they at on their debt situation? Because we already have the national debt. We don't need the local debt on top of that messing with us, So that's all I'm trying to say is be careful about that, because the recourse on that is this type of doubling of taxation and potential issues there, right? Like, you look at Greece, what happened when they shut down the banks and stuff like that. All the other countries were like, oh, did that work? Let's see if this works, because we might be able to do it too, right? So, let's see here. How many building permits are coming out in the market to understand what's happening there? Number of homes sold that are on the market. How long they're staying on the market and things like that. Do you see what's happening right now in California as far as the market goes? Can you tell us a little bit of an update on what you see?
Absolutely. So, price reductions, something we've been seeing. There's been about 36% houses on the market is doing a price reduction for the past 3 months. So, yeah, go ahead.
Another question, Matt. When you're looking at cap an area, you said you look at what time on market. How far back do you go? Because, example, I know because I've talked to you, 6 months ago, a year ago, you're saying, watch, $2 million range. If you look at where the crashes happen, the $2 million range and above, like 2 to 5, is the first one to slow down. So it happened, it started a year ago, now everyone's starting to see it happen. It's places. But how far back do you look at? Like, if there was a crash before, like we had the crash,
I mean,
see what was it for.
The whole idea is to look at it from a historical performance situation. Right? You want to go back like 20 years. Does anybody have like the Bitcoin app on your phone or the Coinbase or whatever it is? I don't know if you can play with the years and stuff like that, and you're going, wow, if I had a day, I see this mark go up like this and I'm rich all of a sudden. But you're like, oh wow, I just had this huge tank that happened right before that. So if you're looking at that volatility, on that long term, you really want to look at the long term play, of what's happening in the market. What was that a year ago? What was it 2 years ago? What was it 3 years ago? What is it in the last 6 months? What about month by month by month through the process? Because out here, are you seeing a lot of slowing right now in California? Or, you're an amazing broker, so there you go, right? You're like, price are right, we're good to go. So,
price is important, but overall, we see the days on market has probably increased 30%.
Okay.
It used to take about 15 days to sell, and now it can be about 20 days to 21 days. It's still great compared to other markets.
Are related?
They're comparison. So compared to 3 months ago,
Is the fact that they're selling sooner due to the price reduction?
they're selling slower, so there is a price reduction. Yeah, that's the correlation.
There's not a ton of offers on properties like there were in the past. Now we're starting to see a little faltering. Some of it may be the interest rate and the squeeze of that, getting some money out there. Yeah, I mean there's definitely a lot of international money though coming here, and they love Los Angeles because it's the shiny penny. They love Irvine. A lot of the international money want to get their money out of their countries. And so we look like a safe haven to them a lot of the times, even though sometimes I'm looking at going, maybe I just don't know China and Japan, how that is. But Japan, for example, they're like getting my money out as fast as possible because their country debt is literally like over 250% debt to gross domestic product. So, and their interest payments right now are 25% of their gross domestic product. And the reason why they've been able to sustain for 20 plus years doing this is because a lot of the Japanese culture is very loyal and they invest in that country. They invest in their own corporate bonds. And they're running out of money and they're losing population, like their population decline is drastic. And so you start to see some of these different things in the market, and because they're running out of money, if the interest rates, they're going to have to go to outside parties for this pretty soon to buy their bonds. And if that happens, and they have to go get just a 1% increase in rate for them will bump their payments from 25% to 75% of GDP. That's madness. That's like them starting to become potentially hyperinflationists. If that happens, I don't think that's a word, hyperinflationist. It's a word. It's not. It's called a madism. That's fine. So there is a lot of international money coming here in different ways, and it does help California because it's that shiny penny, associated with the international markets, even if it doesn't make sense on a cash flow standpoint. So, unless you're doing short-term rentals, if you want to be on the right side of the rent control debate, go sublease properties via short-term rentals, and then you're a renter. And then you can go lease those out for short term, which is not subject to tenant landlord law under 30 days. So exactly. And that's another thing with these other markets is understanding, the distressed sales and the tenant landlord laws. You deal with a lot of investors with tenants here, right? Are you running a management? I think we have
probably a different company.
Okay.
Yes. Right. We rent a lot of tenants. You have to know those tenants and landlord laws. Mm-hmm. Especially in California, when you try to evict them, you have to make sure you do everything right. Sure. Or I guarantee you, like the court is always in favor of the tenants. Right. Not like Memphis. I don't love evicting them, but when I have to evict them, it's like that.
I love evicting them. It's not love evicting them because of the turnover cost. But it's absolutely, it's like you get them out in a couple of weeks. Right. You get a court date in a week or max 2 weeks, and they're out within like 3, or you get your judgment at the end of that 2 weeks, and then they get 10 days to move from there.
Get familiar with the fair housing law. Especially here, we just have one case. Someone lost $10,000. They got fined $10,000 because when tenant called, the receptionist, tenant calls and asks, "Do you guys accept the pets?" And the receptionist simply said, "We have a no pet policy." And just because of that, and they're required to ask if it's a service animal. You have to ask them.
That's now becoming...
It's like discrimination against disabled people.
There's so many little things.
They also have comfort animals, so it doesn't have to be a disability, but I'm not saying it's not a disability, but some people try to get away with misclassifying.
You can ask for training certification.
But I think now you can get it super easy now, right? So...
Yeah, because I was looking into that for an issue with my son, and I called the Organization of Disabilities. She said all this stuff, because people pretend, landlords go, "Well, give me your certificate." She said all these things you see, they're .orgs. She said they're nonprofits, they're entrepreneurs. There's no such thing as a national registry. They all have their own registries. You look at, my understanding, I didn't check it, but if you look at that housing law, you have to have a letter from your doctor. So go look at the housing law and see what you have to have, and that's what you request.
Right. And I think you really want to, the way you get educated on the tenant landlord laws on the market is, one, you can read them and you're going to go to sleep. But you can also go through and hire or talk with an eviction attorney specifically on the exact ways to do this, or go to property managers that have that experience, that have been doing this as well, and understand those tenant landlord laws. And a lot of these other states are nowhere near like that. Still have the discrimination issues and things like that you need to make sure that you don't do. But at the same time, in California, if you do it wrong, they can squat for a long time. And so it's really, scary. People can just go into a vacant house and squat, and you're like, "I don't want to lease." Great, how do you evict them? I'd have a problem. I'd be like, "Where's my guy?" Get out of my house. Yes.
So the other side, actually, represent people who are eviction. They are trying to do this technicality.
Oh, yeah.
So if you don't know what to do there, you're most likely going to lose. Because they just go after the cause, place a good place.
Right. And that's why it's so important to say, hey, before you do anything, if you're managing your own properties in California, go get that attorney to get you that lease in place so it's all done correctly. Go through and make sure that you have that discussion with them. If you have to kick them out, if you have to do anything with them at all, give them notice. Talk to that attorney about it. Make sure you know exactly the right procedure and the right notifications and documentation to make sure that happens and that you have proof for all those items to protect yourself. That's all. Does that make sense? So let's talk a little bit about property analysis.
Okay.
So what do you think if you're walking into a property for a client, okay, and what are some of the things you're looking at to try to protect them?
I mean, when we analyze a deal, or it's more like walking into the house?
So let's start off with the neighborhood, okay? And we'll go piece by piece through this process. But in the neighborhood in itself, I mean, obviously you're looking for certain things, but like what gives you warning signals and things like that right away to make you realize, oh, wait, we back up a little bit.
So for a lot of my flippers clients, investors, a lot of them, they bought a deal, they thought it's great deals. And when I walk in, so sometimes I see an electrical house right in the back. Sometimes I see it's right out to the freeway. Sometimes it's right next to the major roads. So those things, not just the house itself, and not even how is the big market, it's the little things that around the house that really matters. Or even just the next door who likes to collect cars, but not nice ones. Would definitely affect the value of your homes when you're selling it, because those are eyesores. So little things around the house is what I look for. Or sometimes we sell houses that's too close to commercial areas. And right around the corner is a dispensary. Marijuana dispensary. Yeah. So that's what we see around the house.
And all this stuff is going to affect your appraisal, right? So on the back end or the front end when you're buying or selling, right? And those things are huge because
usually sometimes appraiser, they will give you the value because they compare the house to the house. And you thought you really think you get a great deal. But the buyers, they buy it to live in there. So if you're next door, it has some neighbors always play music loud. Someone who's out there drinking beers at 12 p.m. It will affect your value. So look out for those little stuff. And your realtor should be able to help you to watch it. That still depends on where you're at, but yeah.
And you want to be careful about the rural areas as well, and as well as like side streets and things like that, like little cul-de-sacs that are way off in off the beaten path, because nowadays you can market your rentals online and things like that too. But you think anybody's seeing the street sign? And if it's way in the corner somewhere, you got neighbors. That's it. So you have a lot less foot traffic. It's harder to rent those types of properties when they're out out there. With the online stuff, it helps, like I said, a ton. But that rural area, you may have a hard time finding contractors in a rural area or team members in those areas that know what they're doing. And you may have a lack of comps if there's a lot of land around your property. Most appraisers want to look within the last 6 months within a half a mile of your property. That's what they typically look at. And so half a mile in the Midwest, that's like a lot away, So, I mean, sometimes. And so you want to be careful about where those areas are in the neighborhood specifically, yeah.
So I actually went to a property that's listed, and I was just curious about the house in downtown Long Beach, but the front of the house is an alley. The alley is named, Electric Street, but this house... How does that happen? I mean, how does the front of your house become the alley and all the other houses on that strip is facing the house?
Because it's downtown Long Beach.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. You'll be able to do a value add by changing the location of the front door.
I was thinking that, but not if there's another property in front of you.
Right, yeah.
But yeah,
that's crazy. We're gonna have a real hard time with that one. So
that would be a hard one.
Yeah, I'm not going forward with that.
I went out to Longmont, Colorado to look at property, and it's kind of rural. You know that city?
I don't.
I couldn't get an Uber. That told me everything.
Yeah,
I said,
a lot of these markets. You think great, I'll get up at 3 a.m. and catch a flight at 6 or whatever, and you're calling Uber going, there's no Ubers. What is going on? Coming from LA, you're like, that's impossible. or Lyft, okay, there.
What about like for you?
Right.
Main roads. A lot of main roads hard to sell.
It's harder to sell. If you're facing it though, and your front yard is deep enough, the setback is deep enough.
So you have to get setbacks and stuff like that.
Yeah, it depends on the setback.
I mean, I don't know, I could talk to a few other investors. Because you work with investors too. A lot of them are starting to tear those down and build condos right there.
Right.
You know, on main roads, it's hard to do that. To do that. So, what about another city? I gotta know what your address. How's it work with big main roads or single families there?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Same thing.
You have, we normally, when we're looking at main roads like that, if we're looking at all the comps like you're saying, we typically, if we're looking at our comp or our properties like on Main Street, we'll usually reduce that price by 10% or something like that to compensate for that main road.
And municipal holding, I think it would be okay. Tenants don't really care. If you're flipping it, then you would definitely have a longer days of month.
Right.
Unless your price is really aggressive.
And, let's talk a little bit about that holding scenario first. Who's done a cash flow analysis on a property before to understand what goes into that? Okay? Can somebody name a couple of the expenses for me that you guys can think about? Just shout them out, anybody.
Water and trash.
Utilities, trash,
Sewer.
turnover, sewer, landscaping. CapEx is great. Property taxes, insurance, a vacancy factor, a repairs allowance on top of your capital expenditure allowance.
Business license.
Say again?
The business license.
Oh, yeah. I ignore business licenses because it's another way for them to steal money from you.
Until they
Until they catch you, then you're like, hey, right, here's $200. But yeah, so in reality, all these things are expenses. Normally when you're, and each one is different, right? You're going to go through and find, you don't normally have a ton of utility charges when you're dealing with single family homes versus multifamily. And on multifamily, you're analyzing every, expense you have to be able to go through and say, how do I reduce that expense? And how do I increase my revenue on these items? And so when you're going through and looking at every expense, you start to really understand those expenses. And it starts, the better you are at the math on that side and coming up with real projections, the better your cash flow is going to hit what your goals are, right? And so understanding those things is key. One sec, Dave. And going through and saying, hey, what's my initial cash flow analysis before I even buy it based on my cost? You don't even need to know the value of it unless you're trying to compute property taxes that changes. Like here in California, property taxes change where you buy, right? Out in a lot of the Midwest markets, they don't. They change every 5 years based on some other metric that they use. And so, going through and saying, hey, what's my rent amount? How do you analyze rents? Anybody know here? How do you go look up rents? Rent-a-meter potentially for apartments, not singles. Craigslist. Zillow.
You could call
property managers. So I use Craigslist, Zillow, Redfin to get an initial analysis. And what I'm doing, and she knows this, or maybe she does it every day. So you go through and pick the comps right around your neighborhood that are around the same square footage. Like on Zillow, you have to go through and say, hey, my house is 1,000 square foot. Everything around here is 2,000 square feet. Those aren't really comps to my property unless it's. You might want to say, hey, my rent for that 2,000 square foot is $2,000, but mine's only 1,000, and we make a big adjustment for that if there's no other comps on the market. But you're trying to compare 1,000 square foot houses that are 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,000 square foot houses that are 3-bedroom, 2-bath, as best as you can, and making a slight square footage adjustment as well based on that rent amount. But then still looking at the overall market and saying, same thing. My house is 2,000 and everything else is 1,000 square feet and everything else is renting for $1,500 a month and mine's 2,000. I may not get over $2,000 a month. I may get $1,600, $1,700 a month or $1,800 a month instead of what that might compute to is $3,000, right? You're probably not going to get that $3,000 because you're going to be the top of the market. You never really want to be the top of the market in that area. And you also want to compare, in a lot of these rental markets, because you're talking about lower-end properties where the rehab cost is a big percentage of your value, they tend to under-rehab houses. They're like, let's go put lipstick on this thing. make it rentable, get the rent in there, and then go sell it. Not realizing, hey, you got a roof that's going to need to be done in 3 years. You have an HVAC system that's on its last leg. You have, plumbing, electrical. You're going to have constant problems with repairs on. There's things like that can happen, and you want to make sure that when you're doing that, there's a big difference when you're comparing rents on a property like that has basic countertops versus the nice countertops with the backsplash that really only costs a couple $100 extra for the stupid backsplash on half of these things. But the two-tone paints with the trim in a different color, you always want to have darker paint in a rental as much as possible, or paint that doesn't really mark on the walls, that kind of thing. But you're comparing apples to apples, right? You can't really go say this crappy rehab is renting for $1,500. This amazing rehab what's that going to rent for? Is there any other things in the market that are amazing rehabs that I'm seeing rents on in that value to compare to? It's the same thing for the sales too. You can't go pick. It's totally really hard to find these things, and Zillow can be wrong a lot of the times. All these online sites, it can be wrong on square footages a lot of times. So when you're pulling your comps, you want to go to the county assessor's site, see if you can find what the square footage is there to compare it to make sure that's the right number. There's bed and bath can be wrong. It's just data, right? And a lot of times you can't go take this estimate because they include properties that are unrenovated. They don't have a way to say this house is fully rehabbed and this one is not. It has a roof issue and a plumbing issue or whatever differences in those houses. That data can't really extrapolate that. At least as far as I know. Maybe it was smart. Maybe it's way off. We'll see. It's always way off. And they choose properties that are outside of a mile away from the property and sold a year and a half ago instead of within the last 6 months. And you really have to refine your data to get that metric and how far away from that property is to come up with your right estimate. Because if you don't do that, you're going to think your rent's way up here and it's not. And you're going to be screwed, especially if you go buy a big multifamily and do that wrong. And it's all based on that value add on rents on multifamily. So, these are the types of things that you want to look at when you're analyzing, rents and value in a property, right? How do you help people with some of the exit strategies on these things? You have a lot of investors out here in California, right? What are the different strategies they use to try to go sell these things? Or do they multi-units or single? Both. How do they go about? They just come and list it with you. What are the different? How do you market? I'd say a multifamily versus a single family home in different ways, and what's the buyer prospect look like? I guess.
So for me, I don't deal with multi-units.
Okay.
I only do single families. So the exit strategy, the people want to sell their single family residence. They usually want to exchange to multi-units.
Okay.
So the best way would be the 1031 exchange. Okay. Avoid that capital gain tax.
That's huge.
Or you can go extreme. Some of my owners, they love to just live in there for 10 years. And then...
That's great. It's 3 out of the last 5 years now. They changed it. So, but yeah, that's huge. If you have a rental property that has a lot of gains on it and is depreciated and things like that, you can go through and live in it for 3 out of the last 5 years and go resell, and you get that $500,000 if you're married, or $250,000 exclusion if you're single. Gain it gets wiped out for that amount. So that can be a huge potential adjustment there.
Because when did they change it?
Say again?
When did they change it?
Just recently. So yeah, so they made an adjustment saying you have to be there 3 out of the last 5 years instead of 2. And they started prorating it as well based on the amount of years you've been in there and all that kind of stuff.
So effective this year or
next? It was last year. So I could be wrong. I'm a CPA, but I don't do taxes anymore because it's not fun. And I don't want you guys to go pay. I'll go tell you guys all to not pay the government anything.
Because I asked a couple of CPAs and they didn't know. They were still telling me 2 years. So.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, it's 3. It's 3 now. So at least as far as I can be wrong. So go look it up. I'm not a CPA according to you guys. So right now. So, let's see. So. There's some other exit strategies that I had to learn when the market tanked, right? What happens if the market tanked, you're going, crap, I'm not going to get that extra price that I really need. It might be down 5% or something. And how can you add value to still get to your price? Can you do seller financing? Can you structure a deal like that? Can you go out and find people that need that replacement property and do all the work for them and position it for them as the right type of asset for their situation? You know, there's a lot of people out there that are looking for 1031 exchanges. There's a lot of people out there that are looking for specific tax benefits. I sell properties to a lot of the Japanese clients in Japan because of the fact that they can write off the building over 5 years for Japanese tax law. I sell properties via seller financing to self-directed retirement accounts because it's hard for them to get regular bank financing. The same thing with the international clients, even though the Japanese clients don't want to pay my 7% rate because they're looking at 1% rates out there. They're giving, a lot of times in Japan, they're giving their clients, a lot of banks out there are financing U.S. properties at 2% fully amortized 15-year rates on 100% of your purchase if you own property in Japan and have a business in Japan. I'm going, how do I partner with you guys on these deals, right? Talking about resources, right? Like, how do you utilize that resource? And then I realized, well, if I have to give them 50% of the profits, I might as well pay the smaller rate or the higher rate anyways. But, you know, these are the types of things you want to look at and analyze, right? How do you exit a property in a different way? I sell packages of properties to 1031 exchange clients because that's what they need. They need a big package. And so, like, looking at these exit strategies and understanding these different tools is huge. You know, long term when you're trying to get out of a deal or you're trying to maneuver or there's a market shift and things like that, it's really a big deal, you know. You always want to look at your return on investment analysis in detail, right? Understand that number and analyze it on an annual basis. Manage that investment over time consistently. You don't want to just say, hey, here's my budget for my cash flow on this rental that I bought. I think that's what I'm making every month. You want to go revisit that every quarter. Did I do that right? Did I make any mistakes? Did I mess up on my renovation? Did I not do the CapEx that I should have done up front and put that money aside? So there's a lot of little things like that can go into these things. And then documenting your expenses. On the multifamilies especially, they're really important. So knowing, hey, what are all my expenses and what homework should I be doing on these things? Should I go do an environmental? I'm laughing. Should I go do an environmental on this? He had an environmental thing on multifamily just recently, and he got through it really well. Well, right. So you know, do you get a survey on a property? On a multifamily, you better go pull all your leases and understand when those leases started. I know agents that'll throw renters and unqualified renters in properties to make it fully occupied just so you buy it because they know no bank will lend on it, and they know that nobody's going to buy it if it's fully vacant for the price they want. Right? So, question?
I'd say particularly environmental. See if there's been a great gas station around it recently. Not taking shots at you with that.
No, so it's interesting because, you know, understanding that expense documentation, pulling those leases, pulling the actual utility bills, pulling the actual taxes, getting your own insurance quote. So many times on a multifamily, you see the 12-month trailing, and it shows an insurance quote, but the insurance price, the value, what they got it insured for, is at their initial price, and you don't know what they have covered. They can have really bad coverage. And I've seen this where they're like, oh yeah, it's a 30-unit building, my insurance is $3,000. I'm like, no, it's not. What kind of liability are you taking? You know?
So it's about time, so let's do it. What do you think would be the most important things? If you had to pick 3 things to focus on with due diligence.
You better know your numbers. You better know your rehab. Like, numbers meaning all of your costs. Okay? Closing costs, you know, your interest costs, your appraisal costs, your inspection costs, all of your costs involved. Understand those really, really well. And then also understand your market value and what that renovation is going to be. Because you have to know your numbers in detail as much as possible. Those 3 things, I think, are the most important things, right? The cash flow analysis, the numbers up front on the purchase, the market value, and the rehab piece. All that is really, really key to focus on. So, thank you for cutting me off. I didn't realize it was like 9 o'clock. She's giving me the it's 9 o'clock. So, thank you guys very much for this tonight. Thank you.